Hello and welcome to this episode of the Round Ball Australia podcast, thanks to Arrow Sport. Once again, it's me, Jacob Stevens, hosting, and I am joined again, just the two of us, by Poletti. Poletti, it's good to have you back on.
Yeah, it's always good to pop in, particularly when I don't have Lockie trying to put me off in the corner for derailing the show.
Trying to strip points off you in the predictions game as well. But no, we've got some big news to kick this show off. Of course, it broke today as of recording. It's currently Wednesday. It'll be Friday by the time this releases, so kind of old news in that regard. But of course, the big story is that Stajcic is officially out of the Wanderers. It's been a discussion point all season long, Poletti, right? I mean, I feel like I was one of the people that was quite positive for the Wanderers heading into this season. I thought Stajcic had done a tremendous job last season, kind of steadying the ship after a tumultuous exit of Marco Rudan the season before and kind of everything that came with that. He steadied it, got them into fourth, got them playing finals, and it felt like they had a good off-season, recruited seemingly well, but when it came time to actually put performances on the pitch, they weren't able to do that. And I guess that's kind of, what is going to be held against every coach is it doesn't matter how well you recruit, doesn't matter how well you're able to bring the club back from a really bad situation. If you then lead it back into one, if those performances aren't there, those results aren't there, that counts against your name.
Absolutely. One might even say it just doesn't matter, period. Look, I mean...
That was bad.
Yeah, I know, it was bad. I apologize. Look, it's... Yeah, like you said it perfectly. Look, Staj, every interaction I've had with him, he's been top class.
Yeah.
He's been positive. Especially since his stint started at the Wanderers. He did a relatively decent job trying to guide them out of the Marco Rudan situation, as you said. But as Vince Regari wrote in his article today on the situation for the Sydney Morning Herald, he's just the latest fall guy in a series of bad decisions and bad hire after bad hire. It's literally like this goes beyond. It's not just the men's side as well either. Right? This is the thing. This is what Regari points out. Is he says it's not exclusive to the men's football program. The women's football program is suffering as well, despite, again, kind of feeling like they should be doing a lot better than they are. And kind of the spin that he puts on the article is that, in a way, a good Wanderers is good for the A-League because you're getting those fans in, some of the most passionate fans in the league. It creates a great atmosphere. It brings in, the rivalry with Sydney FC, of course, with MacArthur, but also with Melbourne Victory. It's a good thing for the league when the Wanderers are strong. And the truth of the matter is that really kind of since Popovic has left that club, Poletti, which we spoke about before we started recording, it's been really just very, very, you couldn't even say mediocre. It's been pretty poor for the Wanderers. Okay, they had that period where they moved out to Spotless Stadium and they didn't really have a home. But even since returning to CommBank, I mean, they've had 2 seasons in the top 6. But for a team like the Wanderers, that name recognition alone, you head out into the west of Sydney, and you commented on this as well. Like, you see those shirts everywhere. It's part of the cultural identity of that area, and they're just not able to represent that on the field. They're not getting those performances. So while Staj is a great guy, and did a great job last season, the fact of the matter is he couldn't get it done this season, and it's just you've got to eventually cut your losses, and for the Wanderers it just leaves them in another situation now of, well, where do we go next? What do we do now to try and right this ship? I mean, that answer is seemingly Gary van Egmond on an interim basis for the remainder of the season, but I mean, where to next, right?
Yeah.
Like, Van Egmond's probably not getting the job on a full-time basis, and I like I'm trying to think of what he would have to do to even get that. Like, would it be turn them around, make finals, win the grand final for them to think Gary van Egmond's going to work? I mean, and that's not to knock Van Egmond. Like, he's had recent success. He took Hills United into the senior NPL men's New South Wales competition, who he now won't get to coach in that competition. He got them promoted last year from League One. That role has been replaced by Patrick Van Wyk, who is also a former, Wanderers assistant coach. He was most recently coaching Manly United. So the coaching merry-go-round in Australia is just continuing, and who's going to end up where next? No one knows, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I mean, I've been saying it forever. The problems that this club have just go beyond the men's team, and Regari said in his article, I've been saying it, forever with the women's team. Like, there's a reason I picked them to finish wooden spoon when I was doing my dub prediction ladder this year, because it's a case of, well, prove to me that you can't, or prove to me that you can do it before I believe in you. They've made, women's team has made finals once. They've had a bevy of talent at their disposal. This has been their best lineup since COVID. They're sitting bottom of the ladder again. They've just lost Chloe Berryhill for the season to injury, which ends her career. We talked about that on the Dubcast as well, and that's an unfortunate departure for Australian football. But, I mean, I want to pick out something here from Rigari's article on this. Let me find it. My apologies. There we go. They've played finals once in 13 seasons, is referring to the women's team, and feel like an afterthought to the club. But it's not just that. It feels like an afterthought to certain sections of Australian media, certain sections of Australian content creators who predominantly focus on men's football, and that is completely understandable. But in the last, month since sort of like the pressure's really been ramped up on Alan Stajcic, I've heard, both teams are bottom of the ladder in their respective competitions. These are for people who haven't mentioned women's football since the World Cup took place. So spare me your pity, concern about the women's team at the Western Sydney Wanderers. You don't care. You don't talk about women's football. You don't care about women's football. Like, let the people who actually talk about women's football talk about it. And that's just a personal frustration there for me. But, and that's not to knock Rigari on it, because, I'm not saying this Rigari, I'm not saying this like a Joey Lynch type. Like, I'm not knocking those sorts of people. I think we all know the sorts of people I'm talking about when I say that sort of thing. But to the broader point, this, as you said, and this isn't a problem that the next coach is going to fix. This is a problem that goes far, it's embedded into the club itself. It doesn't. You could get Jose Mourinho in tomorrow. It's not going to fix it. You could pull Fergie in. He's not going to fix it. Arsene Wenger, Mikel Arteta. You could get Pep Guardiola out to Wonderland tomorher, and it's not going to fix it.
I think he'd quit after a day, to be honest.
These things, it's no singular coach is going to fix it. There needs to be a complete overhaul of the club at this point, because Stadge is the sixth coach since Popovic left on the eve of the 2017-18 season. And that was probably the last time the club was actually really successful, was just before Popovic left. They've had one successful manager in their history, and it's the current national team coach.
Yeah, I think it's spot on. It goes a lot deeper, but I also feel like the Wanderers try to kind of address that in a way by giving Stajcic a little bit more responsibility than just first team head coach. I believe he was given some responsibility over the footballing department, the operations and things like that as well. I suppose in a way to try and address some of those systemic issues that are at the club, but that's clearly failed. And I hesitate to say that, to be honest, because like I said, I do think the recruitment was really solid in this off-season. The fact that the players haven't worked, that happens sometimes, but on paper they look really, really promising, and they were active and they were getting, what seemed to be quality players. So, that's just the disappointing aspect to it, is when those players don't perform. But you can't always account for that. But they did try to address it, but no, 100% it goes deeper than any one coach is going to be able to fix. And it's kind of, there's two teams that come to my mind immediately when I hear those kinds of things, and that's Manchester United and Tottenham. And it's like, it's these two clubs who have these ideas that they should be, top six clubs in the Premier League. They should be right up there, and they just can't, right? the history of the Tottenham. It's, you know, it's become a meme, but it exists for a reason, right? Because it's true. And it kind of feels like the Wanderers are trending in the same direction, where it doesn't matter who you put in charge, it's just bound to fail every single time for them. They can get as close as they want to winning something, and they will never be able to. You know, they've had, 3 A-League grand finals, obviously under Popovic's era. They did manage the Asian Champions League, which I think we all can agree is one of the greatest sporting achievements by an Australian sporting club, basically ever. Just the odds to come over that. But since then, they have done almost absolutely nothing of note. You know, nothing really in the cup, nothing really in the league, and then the same on the women's side. There's more to this, and it's difficult because it's not like, well, you know, we'll just put some more money into transfers and hope that fixes it. We'll do this or that. We speak endlessly about how, you know, resource limited football is in this country, and it's just compounded in these kinds of situations where a club is on the back foot. They feel like, you know, everything's failing, everything they try, 6 different coaches, you know, a ton of different players. I mean, I feel like I don't recognize half of this team from you know, 3 or 4 years ago. You know, that's one of the things that great A-League teams do, is they can keep a good core around of some veteran players and build around that. The Wanderers can't even do that. It's just everything they're trying is failing, and it's really a shame to see, because this is a team that should be up there. They should be competing. Their fans know it, right? The club clearly knows it as well. And yet there's just something. I don't know if we will ever get to the bottom of exactly what it is, Poletti, but I think it's pretty undeniable at this point that, no single coach is going to fix this. No single transfer, no player is going to fix this. Not even a good season. Finished 4th last season, and now look. So it's just that there's a cultural issue maybe, or there's some sort of underlying thing here that is just killing this club.
Yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, the people who can fix it probably don't know how to, or maybe don't realize that they might be the problem. And I think that presents such a big problem when you're looking at this. But I mean, you know, we mentioned the ideas of transfers, and again, Regari brings this up in the article. They signed Hiroshi Ibusuki to an 18-month contract, and Stajcic has gone 6 days later. Like, you're looking at a situation where, you know, whoever the next coach is coming in next year now is stuck with that contract if they can't get out of it.
Yeah.
Like, unless, you know, Western United miraculously make their way back into the A-Leagues, and he's just like, hey, can I go to Western? And, you know, the A-League loves a mutual termination. We know that. So otherwise, you know, whoever the coach is literally stuck with a very specific type of Japanese striker who doesn't
fit every system, right? It doesn't fit the idea of what every coach is going to want. Yeah, you're spot on. Very specific, quality player, like undeniably so. He's proven that in the A-League throughout his career. But yeah, very much just if you don't have the team around him to support him, it's not going to work out. And yeah, it does leave whoever comes in, you're right, in a tricky spot. But that's kind of the risk that you're taking, right? Sacking a coach mid-season like this. It's why those early sackings happen basically every season, because clubs just want to give a coach some time to get into the swing of things. If you're sacking somebody, you know, halfway through the transfer window, it makes things a lot more difficult for whoever comes in next. So, you know, look, Gary van Egmond is in there, as you said, on an interim basis. We'll likely see out the season. Interesting appointment elsewhere, though, is Ninkovic has come in as an assistant coach there. So his involvement with the Wanderers remains. Questions over, would he just kind of give up and leave the Wanderers full stop once his playing career was done? But that seems not to be the case fully. He's now moving firmly into their senior coaching roles, which... let's see how it plays out. We've seen some great players go on to become great coaches, and we've seen some great players go on to be not great coaches. But it's just interesting from the perspective of his legacy, Poletti. I'll admit, I was one person who thought, right, now that he's retired, things are going to, you know, kind of settle down, and Sydney fans, while not happy with his late career move, will go, well, he didn't achieve anything. It was completely pointless for him. And we can still kind of admire what he did for us when he was with us. We don't, we don't like him for what he did, but he was a quality player for us. But now it's just he's fully buying into I'm a Wanderers man now, and it's just such an interesting switch so late in his career to move to the Wanderers as a player, and then to stick with that in the coaching and just go, nope, this is who I am now. It's a bit of a stab in the back to the Sydney FC, I suppose.
But I mean, that was made up when he was quote unquote forced out of the club. Yeah. Like that ship sailed a long time ago. That is what it is. I did find it interesting that for probably about a good hour or so on Tuesday that Ninkovic was apparently going to be the new coach. Period. I don't know how that got started, but
I think that was just social media frenzy. I think that was just one person says it and everyone goes, it must be the truth then, and that's the scary power of social media. But yeah, that was a funny rumor to see. I immediately was like, are we sure about this? Like, appointing Ninkovic head coach, that's even on an interim basis, that's crazy. But
I mean, this is the Western Sydney Wanderers after all. There,
yeah,
but yeah,
true.
no, look, I don't dislike the appointment of Gary van Egmond. I think Van Egmond, he's a known quantity. You know what you're getting. It's on a 6-month basis until the end of the season. The Wanderers just need someone to steady the ship, right? And it was untenable under Alan Stajcic, not just from a on-field perspective, but from the off-field perspective with the fans, right? They were they were walking away from games in droves. They weren't turning up. You can't continue to leave that going for the rest of the season like that because you're gonna finish bottom of the ladder again. Like this isn't like that's not tenable for the Western Sydney Wanderers. And I mean they'll take a strong travelling contingent next weekend to the Sydney Football Stadium for the derby because of course they will. They always do. But what happens next is key. Can Van Egmond at least give them something from a footballing perspective to get them to play back? Is it just as simple as generic 4-4-2 and let them play
Hope
football?
For the best, yeah.
Like is that the way to do it? And you get a result here, you get a result there. Suddenly, you're not that far out of the 6. Like I know it's we're halfway through the season. They're 12 points off top place. They're 8 points out of the 6. But teams just none of the teams just seem to want to build any consistency at the moment, unless you're the Newcastle Jets who have won 4 of their last 5. I don't think it might even be 5 of their last 6. Everyone else is dropping games left, right, and center. You pick up 1 or 2 results, especially above those teams that are directly above you on the table. I mean, they're all
that's everyone for the Wanderers.
You know what I mean? Like the 9th place, 10th place sort of teams, right? Like you pick up a couple of results there, and suddenly you're sitting in 8th place on the table, and you're 1 win out of the 6 with 5 rounds to go, and you can make a late charge for finals, give your fans something to be happy about, and give them some optimism for next season again. That being said, I mean, how many times have we seen that sort of come out of the Wanderers? Great preseason hype video, the optimism's there, everyone's ready to go, and then round 4, and you've got 1 draw, 3 losses, and you're playing, the club's playing, bad football, and the fans don't care.
Yeah. And I think that's the double-edged sword of a club like the Wanderers, right? Where the fans almost kind of demand excellence, right? They came into the competition, blew everybody away. They were tremendous, playing great football, came so close a few times early on, slowly built back up again. 2016 had another shot, couldn't quite make it over the line. But, they had the Asian Champions League along the way. Like the fans in those early years were just expecting this to be a competing club every single season. And so when you're good with this team, the fans get behind you and they rally around you and they'll give you everything. But when you have a run of form like this, regardless of how well you did last season, all things considered, it doesn't matter because last season doesn't matter now. You didn't win anything last season. You're definitely not going to win anything this season if you stick with Staj. it's a double-edged sword, because it's great to have those fans who are so passionate and really want their team to succeed, but when you're not succeeding, you get this, and you end up in these situations where you're looking for a coach halfway through a season, halfway through a transfer window. You're, I think, slightly more, optimistic about the Wanderers' chances than maybe I am, which shouldn't come as a surprise. Let's be realistic. But yeah, I just, it's close, yes, but it's so uninspiring. I don't know. Maybe a new coach does fix that, and it gets them playing football in a different way, like you said. Maybe they revert to some basics, and they just try and let their players play. But it's such a dire situation for them to be in. It's a real shame, because they are on their day a great team and a great asset for the league. But when they're off like this, it kind of stinks a little bit, to be honest, and it's a big old shame.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Look, I guess to try and take a positive from this, not that there's many to take from it, is that they've only committed to Van Egmond, Ninkovic, and I can't remember the name of the other assistant off the top of my head, but he was there. He was involved in the NPL program as well. They're only committed to that for 6 months. I'm not sure how many of their players are off contract. That they potentially have the chance in 6 months' time to just wipe the slate clean and start again.
Refresh.
Right, like just a complete refresh, tear it down, rebuild. Like you would in Football Manager. You get to the end of the season and it's like, right, half the squad's off contract. This didn't work.
Anyone over 25 years old is out.
You're gone. Don't come back. We got knocked out in the round of 16 in the Champions League or whatever, and mid-table we stayed in the top flight. Let's rework this. Let's come back next year. With a brand new squad, brand new mentality, brand new attitude. And to be fair, the A-League is a league where you can do that, especially given, as I said already, the A-League loves a mutual termination because we don't have a transfer. We don't have a domestic transfer system. Right. So the A-League loves a mutual termination. Everyone's always looking for, those few players that are just constantly moving around clubs. And I know, the Recycle League gag gets thrown out a lot, but sometimes players just need a new environment, and that's all it is. So, maybe things can look up for the Wanderers again, or maybe I'm just drinking the Kool-Aid. Like, I've watched one too many preseason hype videos from the club.
Well, it's just, it goes to this idea as well of, I think there's now increased scrutiny on the Wanderers more than there has been in a long, long time, because a lot of it was excused, right? They don't have a home. They're, playing out of an AFL grounds, in the middle of nowhere, like nobody cares, nobody's turning up. Oh, they come back, COVID hits. Oh, well, we can kind of excuse that, got COVID. Rudan comes in, and then you get kind of those accusations of some cultural issues and things like that within the club. It feels like things have been excused and just kind of pushed down the line, and now it's gotten to a point where Stajcic is a nice guy, did a good job rectifying the problems that were left by his predecessor, but now he's failed anyway. Right, okay. Yeah, that's a problem, and that's where articles like what Vince wrote, I think, are super important, and hopefully will kind of open the club's eyes a little bit and get them going, we actually might need to make some changes around here. Continuing with A-League news, of course, we spoke about Poletti earlier in the week, the controversial VAR decision in the original rivalry, which everybody's still super heated over, and the explanation that has been provided by the head of referees, John Moss, has not helped matters in the slightest, because people are still just going to keep arguing about it anyway. But essentially, there's a short little 2-minute video that the A-Leagues have posted, both on their website, on their social media channels, so go and watch it if you haven't. But John Moss explains that, realistically, the fact that Joshua Smits had to look around Stajcic, okay, maybe in the moment that the freeze frame was taken, he's got a clear view of the ball. He's had to step away or kind of swivel around him to get that view of the ball. That's the impeding in the line of vision. If he'd have stood where he was previously, it would have been directly in the line of vision. Now, make of that what you will. The idea that he wouldn't have saved it anyway is irrelevant. It doesn't say, the interference in the offside law interferes with a play that the player would have reasonably made. It's just interferes with the player's ability to make a play. And he could have made a play. It would have been futile. Yes, we can all agree on that. It's a sweetly hit ball. But in the view of the VAR, the on-field referee, the view of head of referees, I think the view of a lot of people as well now starting to come around to the idea that by the letter of the law, it makes sense. And I think this decision, at least this explanation rather, has kind of clarified that for a lot of people, that's the exact reasoning is, yep, it's harsh, but letter of the law, he's standing in the way. Smits has had to kind of look around him. That's enough to give it offside.
Yeah, absolutely. As I said on our as I said in our show earlier in the week, like, I had no issue with it when it was given. I didn't understand, the furor that was over it, like everyone getting angry about it. I'm just like, by the letter of the law, it's offside. Like, we can't take these sorts of, like, it has to be a black and white decision, and that's what it is. I thought the VAR audio that was posted as well was interesting. Lara Lee was the VAR operator for the game, and Daniel Elder obviously being the referee. I thought that was quite interesting to listen to as well. And I've still seen some people trying to hit back on that as well, just this whole idea of it. And it's like, people, for some reason, much like other things that have gone on recently in Australian football, I feel like they're being deliberately obtuse about certain things. And in this particular case, they're looking at this idea of the line of vision as if it's a direct line of sight, from where Josh Smits is to the ball, and that's all that should count. Now, for those of you who disagree with that assessment, let me rephrase that. For those of you who agree with that assessment, that the idea of the vision is directly what's in front of you, and so you draw a line from where Josh Smits is looking, and that's all it is, and Jalasic's not anywhere near that line. But the goals are where they are, and Jalasic's in an offside position, which we understand, and as I said on Monday, it's not exactly... it's not an offence in and of itself to stand in an offside position. Now, I want you to go through a little bit of a task with me, okay? Just humour me for the listeners. If you agree with that idea that the direct line of sight is all that should be taken into account, I want you to close your left eye, and then I want you to close your right eye, and I want you to tell me if you see anything to either of those sides. You don't? That's because periphery vision exists, right? We understand that. And Jelacic, from the angles that we have, and we don't have the exact angle, and we're not going to get a VR headset to show us exactly what Joshua Smits was seeing, but to me, it looked very much like he was in the periphery vision, which impacts his ability to make the play, which is why the VAR has made the decision that they've made. And it says, I don't exactly have a problem with it. I completely agree with it. And honestly, hopefully, the quicker we move on from it, the better.
Yeah. And I mean, John Moss makes the same kind of statement too. He says, something in your sight line is going to change the way you react to something as a goalkeeper fundamentally. And I do want to say as well, though, a great point, and I think that this kind of summarises it for a lot of people, brought up by Joey Lynch on the Suited and Booted podcast the other day. Shout out to him, by the way. But he said, it's by the letter of the law, it's offside. For the vibes, it's terrible. You'd love to be able to take offside on vibes, but then can you imagine the absolute just...
I mean, at the moment, we basically take handball on vibes, right? And look how much complaint that generates. And I made this point on Monday. It's
like a fine decision to make because offside is black and white, but it sucks for the vibes. So I thought that was quite an apt way of describing it because I think a lot of people can agree with that. Okay, well, we're going to jump into some transfers now, Poletti, because, of course, we've mentioned a few times on this podcast, it's the transfer window. People are going to be moving around clubs. Clubs are going to be looking to grab some players. And the big headlining one recently, City are out to sign some players, it seems, and capitalise on this push for Socceroos potential players who want to get themselves to the World Cup later this year. And it's a big one. It's a huge one. Crossing the Melbourne Divide. Again, let's not forget where he started. Daniel Arzani is going to Melbourne City on a loan until the end of the season. Now for the club, fantastic deal. That's massive. They're getting a really quality A-League player on loan to the end of the season, non-committal, all great. For the player, he's going to a club that is playing a lot of football, obviously playing in the Asian Champions League elite, playing in the A-League, and that realistically will have their sights set on a deep run in finals in the league as well. He's got his sights set on the World Cup. the biggest losers, I think, are the fans of both Melbourne Victory and Melbourne City, because I have not seen a lot of widespread support from either of those two fan bases for this move. City fans are like, okay, he could be a good player, but I hate it. I hate what this is saying about, where we are as a footballing nation, that you're just happy to grab your rival on loan, grab a rival player on loan, and just play him for the rest of the season. And it just doesn't quite sit right with a few people. But in terms of just a footballing business perspective, this seems like an absolute steal for Melbourne City. It
does. Familiar with the club as well. Spent time there. As a prospect. How we made the 2018 World Cup squad. Look, is Daniel Arzani going to be the first player to be booed by everyone in a Melbourne derby? Like, everyone's just booing him. Like, he's gonna have 30,000 people booing him, including his own fans, right? Like there's no way that this is tenable, from a fan perspective. Look, I mean, it was 8 years ago, talking about Daniel Arzani in the lead up to the 2018 World Cup, and he was going to be the wonder kid that was going to save, the Socceroos. He was going to be the future of Australian football. And I know injuries are a thing, which have been incredulously unfortunate for Daniel Arzani's career. I mean, look at this, right? So 24 appearances for Melbourne City, then a move to Manchester City where he made 0 appearances, out on loan to Celtic, Utrecht, Young Utrecht, AGF, and Lamel. So that's 1, 5, 11, 15, 28 appearances in 4 seasons across 5 different clubs because of injuries.
Yeah.
He then comes to Macarthur for 19 games. Then goes to Melbourne Victory for 60.
Completely forgot that stint. Completely forgot that.
Spent 1 season at Macarthur. Then goes to Melbourne Victory, where he plays 60 games. So the most games he's played in his career for a single club under Tony Popovich. Yeah. He then goes to Turkey, I think. No, not Turkey.
He went to
Hungary. Yes. Yeah. Then goes to Hungary. Has played 3 games and has now come back to Melbourne City on loan.
Yeah.
And in that time, that has had 11 appearances for the senior national team.
Yeah.
Like, I know injuries happen, and I know he's been incredulously unfortunate in terms of the injuries, but I don't know. Like, why do I feel like we're one more move away for Arzani before we go, what happened? There's gonna be he's gonna be one of these players in 5 years' time that's subject to those 20-minute YouTube videos. What happened to this Australian wonder kid? Why this Australian wonder kid failed at football and all those sorts of things, right? I unfortunately feel like that's where we're going with Arzani. We know Popovich loves him. Melbourne City, he's gonna have plenty of time to play football. He's going to the World Cup, isn't he? As long as he's fit, he's going to the World Cup, surely. Which
it's a tough discussion because he's competing with a number of very talented players in those positions, and it's just okay, you bring us on, you got to leave someone out. Who are you leaving out? That's the thing. It is true, Popper does love him, and he has, to be fair, when given the opportunity with the Socceroos, been pretty solid. It's just I agree with your sentiment though that I think he's already at that stage of being a what if. He's 27 years old. Okay, that's not old. Don't get me wrong, but this is the point in careers where players should really be getting into their prime, especially attacking players, and it just kind of feels like because of all those injury derailments, he's not been able to fulfill that potential that we saw 8 years ago, right? And it's such a shame because this is the kind of story that we talk about when players leave overseas and we go, don't be the worst case scenario and get injured and then not play and end up like this. And it's a shame because he is a talented player and we see it. We see the impact he can have. We saw how well he played for Victory last season, which earned him a move back to Europe, and then he gets there and I think some of the situation at his club at Ferencváros has been out of his control. There were issues with the number of visa players that they were allowed, and they had too many of them, so they just couldn't play everybody and things like that. Which that would be wild if that happened in the A League, by the way. Could you imagine teams not knowing how many visa players they're allowed to sign? They'd be the laughing stock of the league. So it's not completely his fault, but. Yeah, it is a big shame, and he's one of those players. You're right that Popovic will be considering to take to the World Cup. So it's a move that had to be made. And I guess when City's the team that's offering you that opportunity, there's a lot worse places in the league to go.
Yeah, absolutely. There's going to, as said, plenty of game time available to him.
Yeah.
This is the case of whether he can make the most of it.
Yeah. I'm going to move to the Mariners now because there's a couple of signings there. Nathaniel Blair and Chris Donnell Poletti, which I know is an interesting one because, of course, there's that Sydney Olympic connection coming back to the Mariners despite everything that we've heard about how that relationship has been going. They've still managed to be friendly on the player signing front.
I can only imagine this was one of those contracts that was signed before the APL took over last week, and we know that A-League teams, or A-League's clubs, absolutely love to delay the signing announcements until certain things happen, right? So maybe it was just one of those signings. And then Nathaniel Blair on loan from the Glory as well. So at the end of the day, the Mariners need players. You got to field a team somehow, right?
Yeah, I think it's interesting though that they're kind of things that the APL taking over their license isn't fantastic, but they're not kind of showing signs of being, dead, if that makes sense. Like a lot of the time when the APL has had to step in, we're like, ooh. Yeah, this is like the absolute last chance for this club, but it really does feel like the Mariners are trying as much as they can, and you can't help but really feel for them because it was not long ago they were the team everybody feared in this league. Nobody could beat them. Nobody knew how to. They could score a bunch of goals. They could defend really well, and of course, over time, those players leave. Coaches change. Coaches come and go. Coaches leave again, and you end up here, but. It still feels like, they're making moves in the transfer market. That is more than can be said for a lot of clubs in this league. They're trying to address problems, and there's just still, you can tell from the playing group, the way they're playing, they're trying to get as many results as they can. And from the APL's, perspective as well, we know that they want to keep the team on the coast and they want a quick sale. So hopefully that can be achieved. But it doesn't feel quite as grim, perhaps, as some of these other situations we've had over the years, Perth Glory, Newcastle Jets, Western United, where it did really feel like it was quite on the brink for those clubs.
Yeah, I mean, how much of that, though, is potentially the idea that we've just become desensitized to the idea that the Mariners are in trouble, because it seems like they've been in trouble for most of the last decade. Yeah. Like, I mean, like maybe we've just become desensitized to it. But look, it's hopefully just, only, by the end of the season, they'll have found a buyer for it, which is more than I can say for one particular club. So we'll see what happens there. But I mean, as I said, you need players to play. Someone like Nathaniel Blair, who's represented Australia in the under 23s level, you can certainly do a lot worse than that. Yeah,
it's exactly right. You need players. You're getting players with experience. That's solid. You're not just picking up the kids again and just using those. Final signing, real notable one. Stefan Kolakovsky returns to the Glory Poletti, and this one was rumoured a couple of days ago, and basically everybody knew who it was based off of the promo pictures that they posted, but it was great to see the confirmation, and followed it up at the announcement, the announcement on social media with the classic 6-7 meme, which I know you absolutely love, Poletti, and I'll admit, I've come around to it, to be honest. In certain ways, I kind of can laugh at it a little bit, but no.
I mean, look, we've got to have some fun at some point, right? But that being said, I did accidentally mention it. I did accidentally do the 6-7 in a press conference quote a couple of weeks ago, and I immediately apologized as soon as I'd realized what I'd said, because I'm just like, nope, That's bad, Poletti. Shouldn't have said that. What was it? The time was Stajcic. Because they had a little bit of time where they were only playing instead of once every 3 days. I said, once every 6-7 sort of days. And I'm just kind of like, oh god,
immediately what you've done.
Didn't mean it in any way, shape, or form. It's a general football parlance to say that sort of thing. So but yeah. Look, I mean, Kolakowski, got had a ACL injury to deal with. He was training with the club for a little bit. No promise of a contract or anything at the end of it. Just get his fitness back, and the club's giving him a contract. Feel good story, honestly. Like 100%. The sort of story you love to see, and hopefully, Kolakowski can understand Adam Griffiths, because it seems the rest of us don't. So hopefully at least he can understand. Along with the rest of his teammates. Things are flying high at the Glory, and having another feel-good story to add to that certainly won't do any harm.
100%. And final signing, not a player, coach, but not for an A-League club, for the Socceroos. Mile Jedinak has joined Popovic's coaching staff at the Socceroos, Poletti, and I suppose this kind of segues nicely into what we're going to talk about next, with the fact that the next slate of Socceroos games has been announced as the FIFA Series 2026. Now, this is FIFA being FIFA. I think the idea is it's a 4-team. They're calling it a competition, or it's some games between 4 clubs, or not even 4 clubs, 4 national teams rather, from different confederations, although 2 of them are from Asia. So how different is that? And then you've got Cameroon and Curacao as well. Curacao, I believe, are in Africa. Don't get me, don't get me if I'm wrong with that. But the idea is you're pairing up teams that normally wouldn't play against each other, and from that perspective, I think there's, the intention is good. And it does force these teams that would just play it safe and wouldn't try to expand anything too much. It does force them to play these games, I suppose. But I feel like the Socceroos have done a good job already in terms of, at least in the build-up to this World Cup, of going out and playing against European teams, South American teams, North American teams, in places like America, to really ramp up preparations for the World Cup. Now, these 2 games against Cameroon and Curacao will take place in Sydney and Melbourne, respectively. So they'll play against Cameroon in Sydney on the 27th of March and Curacao in Melbourne on the 31st of March. And look, it's going to be one of those absolute final hit-outs, Poletti, before the World Cup. Coming up against Cameroon, who historically have been a pretty solid team, and off the back of an AFCON campaign as well. So, they'll be in fit and fighting form. Curacao perhaps a little bit less of a threat. But I guess it's good to get a look at some African competition, I suppose, in the build-up to the World Cup.
Where have you got this idea that Curacao are an African team from?
Are they not? Are they not one of those African islands, or are they a Caribbean one? Maybe
Caribbean, yes.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. I knew it was one of the 2. I was like, are they like
where
a Cape Verde, where they're like off the west coast of Africa or something?
No.
I don't know. I've let myself down with my geography there.
I need to get you back on GeoGuessr then, clearly.
Haven't played in a while. That's what's done it.
Yeah, no, look, I think it'll be good. I know there's a small section of soccer Twitter that is incredibly excited by Curacao coming here to play some games. So, anything that makes soccer Twitter happy is a good day, because it means we're not all slinging crap at each other, which is nice. Look, I think there'll be some fun games. They're double headers as well. So, one in Sydney, one in Melbourne, as you said. I'm looking forward to it. Chance to watch some international football, which is always nice. And I don't know, maybe Matt Olsen might have a reason to come spend a week on the East Coast, because this is exactly the sort of thing he'd get incredibly excited for.
He'd live for this. I'm amazed, to be honest. He hasn't been blowing up our group chat more with absolute nonsense about this, and he's been paying attention, of course, to AFCON
where Cameroon bowed out in the quarterfinals. But yeah, no, it could be great fun, and that's kind of the angle that I think a lot of the messaging so far has taken. Is it's going to be fun to see fans of these kind of new teams to Australia, I suppose, in a way, to have a chance to watch their teams, and also for the Socceroos fans, of course, to get a final glimpse kind of their team before the World Cup. And it's going to be tough for Popovic. Who's he picking? We've already had kind of the discussion with Arzani. Does he fit? We've heard discussions about, like Craig Goodwin as well as another one who, does his form this season merit his selection, that sort of stuff. So it's going to be fascinating to see. And I'm sure at some point we'll have planned another one of those tier list videos where we select who's going on the plane for round ball Australia. But no, it'll be great to see how that all pays off. And we're going to end off now, Poletti, today's episode, with the weekend look. We brought it back last week. We're bringing it back again because I think it's a great way to kind of dissect some of the games that we've got coming up in the A-League. And look, I think it's pretty obvious who it's going to be a big weekend for, right?
Yeah, of course, it's going to be a big weekend for Michael Balcanis. No, I'm kidding. But we all know it's going to be a big weekend for Gary van Egmond. It's absolutely going to be a massive weekend. Oh, actually, let me rephrase. I'll rephrase that. It's going to be a big weekend for the Wanderers, period.
Wanderers as a whole, yeah.
Yeah. Men's team, women's team, the lot, right? It's going to be a big weekend for the club. This is a chance to put things in the right direction. Let's see it happen.
100%. I'm also going to say, I think it's going to be a big weekend for Sydney. Of course, disappointing result last time out against Wellington, were really not at their best. Now they have big blue game away in Melbourne, which is tough, but against a Victory team that lost brutally to Adelaide, in the late drama that we had there in the original rivalry last week. They're going to be absolutely fired up for this one. They're going to want to get all 3 points. Sydney really cannot afford to do that, or they're going to see just themselves slip away from Auckland ever so slightly, and I think that they can't really afford to do that. We'll move on now, Poletti. Let's say this is a dream world. What do you want to see happen this weekend in the A-League?
Oh, that is a very, very good question. I don't know. like I legitimately don't know. You come back to me on that one. You go first.
Okay, well, I'm going to say, I want to see some of these new signings make an impact. I want to see Mitchell Duke on the score sheet. I want to see Daniel Arzani, ripping it around in MacArthur. I want to see Ajak Riak back up what was a solid performance in the original rivalry for Adelaide United, although some of the Olyroos are back now, so there'll be competition for spots again at some of these clubs. But I just feel like we've seen a lot of really cool signings so far, and then, kind of last week was the first real opportunity for a lot of them to actually get some minutes for these new clubs. This week, I think, is going to be their real first test. See how they go with their new clubs. And for some of these that are taking that Socceroos angle, to see, have they got it? And are they going to be able to hit the ground running like they need to secure that spot on the plane?
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. For my inner dream world, you know what? I want to sit in a dream world. Attendances are at one of the highest points they've been all season. Newcastle are on a roll. They're absolutely ripping it up. They play on Friday night. Auckland are at home. So there's a strong crowd likely there. Can Brisbane capitalise on the momentum they've been building recently? They play at home. A good time, a nice time slot as well for them. MacArthur are playing City. Okay, whatever, but MacArthur are celebrating their mascot Arthur's birthday. They're running a school supplies drive as well, so plenty of reason to get out of Campbelltown. The Wanderers fans have got motivation to come back. New coach, chance to see something good. Adam Griffiths makes a trip to Western Sydney, so Perth Glory have been fun to watch. So even if the Wanderers haven't been the greatest, fans should still be entertained. Well, maybe at least
fans might turn up, right?
Yeah.
New coach. Let's see what it's like. Yeah.
Yep. And then obviously, the Big Blue on Monday evening, on Monday afternoon, I should say. Yeah. Plenty of it usually draws a strong crowd. I believe last I saw, 15,000 tickets have been sold already. I'm still a few days out, so this could hit 20, if not more. Like this is a proper good weekend on paper to have crowds, on the up. Let's see it happen.
I love that. Worst case scenario, I'm going to come straight back to you. Surely you got something for this.
Worst case scenario, look, I know we just talked about it being a big weekend for the Wanderers. Do I have to say it?
A loss would kill
Are you going to make me say it?
No, I think we can read your mind there. Yeah, it's definitely. I think that goes hand in hand, right? It's a big weekend for the Wanderers. Sorry, because if they win, cool, fine. That's what everyone's hoping for. If they lose, oof, that's
not so much just a loss, but
like a tough opposition. But yeah, it depends how they look, right?
Yeah,
like
I was thinking like if they just come out and they look lifeless under Van Egmond, and they get absolutely smacked pillar to post, and Perth Glory, run away with this 4-0, 65% possession, 20 shots, 8 on target. If this is just a proper old school beat down style of a game from the visiting team, oh God,
it's not going to be nice, is it? No, I agree. My worst case scenario. VAR. Just putting it out there in the ether. We've just had a massive discussion all week about literally a black and white rule in law in football, right? Offside, you're offside or you're not. Having arguments about that. I cannot wait for this weekend. Something is going to happen, Poletti. I can guarantee it. Something is going to happen, and VAR is going to make everybody annoyed again. I'd say everybody. A large majority of people, maybe one entire fan base, that kind of thing. It just feels destined to happen, and with the season that we've had so far as well, it feels like every week it's getting worse for them. Every week is something new. They just need 1 week of normality, 1 week where nothing really happens. They make good decisions, that both, sets of supporters go, yeah, no, that's fair enough. Yeah, that was obviously a red card. That was obviously this. That was obviously that. And just kind of move on and just pray that nothing happens that's going to cause any controversy. But it just feels like it's going to happen, right? Like, it just, come on, surely. There's going to be some weird handball. We've had about one of those every week. There's going to be a contentious red card. Worst case scenario, sorry. Let me rephrase it. Player is in an offside position impeding the line of sight of the goalkeeper and isn't called offside. Just amend it to make it that, because that would go crazy.
It's just, it could just be one of those things. It's just, it feels like it, it's probably going to happen at some point.
Well, that would do for today's episode of the Roundball Australia podcast. Always fun chatting football, having a quick look ahead as well to the weekend with some crazy predictions. All sorts going on in the game. We can't wait to be back again early next week, recapping all the fixtures that we have over the weekend. Poletti, pleasure to have you on as always.
Love being here.
And that will be all from us. So stay tuned. Like I said, we'll be around at some point early next week, Monday morning hopefully, with a recap of all of the weekend's fixtures. Should be fun.